Story 1. The Passenger in the Dark. It was early June of 2017 when I embarked on a road trip with my 9-year-old son Ben to visit family in West Virginia. The drive was grueling, made worse by the fact that my car's air conditioning had stopped working. The sweltering summer heat bore down on us as we pushed through the 6-hour drive. To make matters worse, Ben and I had a small argument. Something personal that neither of us really wanted to talk about. By the time the sun had set, the mood in the car was tense, our conversation reduced to silence. By 9 p.m., we were still on the highway when Ben started complaining that he needed to use the bathroom. We hadn't spoken much in the past hour, but I could hear the irritation in his voice. I wasn't in the mood for another argument, so I kept my eyes peeled for a rest stop. Finally, a blue sign flickered past in the headlights, signaling one just ahead. The rest area was small, just a dimly lit building with 2 restrooms, a few vending machines, and a couple of worn-out benches. The only other vehicle in the lot was a large white pickup truck, parked ominously under a flickering streetlight. I pulled up close to the bathroom entrance, and before I could even say anything, Ben threw open the door and ran inside. I left the engine running, knowing he'd be back soon. A minute passed, then 2. The back door of the car suddenly opened and shut with a quiet click. I assumed it was Ben. The weight in the back seat felt heavier than usual, but I was lost in thought and didn't say anything. I just pulled back onto the road. That's when I noticed the white pickup truck following me. At first I thought it was a coincidence, but as I switched lanes, so did he. When I sped up, he matched my speed. Then he started flashing his high beams. I tried to shake him by pulling into the right lane, but he followed, still flashing his lights. My heart started pounding. Annoyed and slightly unnerved, I finally slowed down. The pickup pulled up beside me, and through my window I saw a man frantically gesturing at my car, shouting something I couldn't hear over the wind and the roar of the highway. Hesitant, I cracked my window just enough to make out his words. "Pull over! Now!" he shouted. I hesitated but veered onto the shoulder. My instincts screamed at me to be ready to drive off at any moment. The man jumped out of his truck and sprinted toward my window. My grip tightened on the wheel. Then he shouted something that made my blood turn to ice. "That's not your kid." Confused, I turned to the back seat. At that moment, the right side door opened and a tall, shadowy figure bolted from my car into the darkness. I stumbled out of my seat, heart hammering as I watched the figure disappear into the thick forest lining the highway. It wasn't Ben. It was a fully grown man. A stranger had climbed into my car at the rest stop. Panic surged through me as I realized Ben was still back at the rest area. I floored it, cutting across the grassy median, ignoring the blaring horns of passing cars. The man from the pickup followed close behind. We reached the rest stop in under a minute. Ben stood outside the bathroom, looking bewildered. Relief hit me like a wave, and I nearly collapsed as I scooped him into a hug. The pickup driver and I quickly explained what had happened. Ben had never gotten into the car. He had been waiting outside the whole time. I don't know who that man was. I don't know what his intentions were, but to this day I thank that stranger in the pickup for saving my son from whatever nightmare had just been narrowly avoided. Story 2. The Passenger Who Screamed. My girlfriend Lisa and I had taken a road trip to California. The way there was easy. The drive back? Not so much. We left midday, which meant most of the ride home would be in darkness. By the time midnight rolled around, we were exhausted. We decided to grab a late-night meal at a Wendy's off the highway. It was quick. We just wanted to get home. As soon as we got back on the road, rain started falling. Lisa nagged me to pull over, worried about the worsening conditions and the fact that I was still eating. Annoyed but understanding, I pulled onto the shoulder as the rain turned into a torrential downpour. That's when we heard the knock on the window. The sight of a drenched, dishevelled woman standing outside in the rain nearly made me jump out of my skin. Her face was pale, eyes hollow and sunken, lips trembling. She pressed both hands to the window, pleading, "Please, can you give me a ride?" Lisa shot me a look, a silent plea not to. But I couldn't leave someone stranded in a storm. Against my better judgment, I unlocked the back door. The woman climbed in without a word. As we merged back onto the highway, I asked where she was headed. Silence. Lisa turned, her expression shifting from concern to unease. "Miss, where do you need to go?" I repeated. Nothing. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The woman sat still, her wet clothes clinging to her thin frame. But what disturbed me most was her face, expressionless, mouth slightly open, eyes locked on me, unblinking. The tension in the car was suffocating. Then, suddenly, she let out an ear-piercing scream. Before I could react, her hands shot forward, gripping my throat from behind. Lisa shrieked, clawing at the woman's face, drawing blood. I swerved wildly, nearly crashing into the guardrail. My vision blurred. Summoning all my strength, I slammed the brakes, sending the car skidding to a stop. I flung the door open and wrenched the woman out. She hit the pavement with a sickening thud. Then she started whispering, "Please, please, please." She didn't try to get up. She just lay there whispering that single word over and over again. Lisa was already on the phone with the police as I jumped back into the car and sped off. I don't know what was wrong with that woman or what she planned to do to us, but I know one thing: I'll never pick up a hitchhiker again. Story 3. The Roadblock. It was supposed to be a straightforward drive, 14 hours from Pennsylvania to Georgia. I had done it before. I could do it again. I never expected to find a trap waiting for me in the middle of nowhere. It was close to midnight when I found myself on a lonely stretch of road, dense forest on both sides. No streetlights, no houses, just the glow of my high beams cutting through the darkness. That's when I saw it. 2 orange traffic cones placed haphazardly in the middle of the road. No signs, no construction equipment. Just cones. Something felt wrong. I slowed down, my instincts screaming at me to turn around. Then, in the faint glow of my headlights, I saw movement in the trees. A figure watching me. And then another, and another. A dozen shadowy figures stepped onto the road, blocking my path. My heart pounded. My hands clenched the wheel. And then they started running toward my car. I didn't hesitate. I threw the car into reverse, my tires screeching as I sped backward. The figures sprinted after me, their shapes barely distinguishable in the darkness. My breathing came in short gasps, my hands slick with sweat. Then I saw it. Another set of cones behind me. My stomach dropped. They had boxed me in. I slammed on the brakes, my mind racing. My only option was to plow through. Gritting my teeth, I shifted back into drive and floored it. The figures in front of me scattered, some diving into the woods, others pounding on my car as I barreled forward. A heavy thud echoed through the vehicle as I clipped one of them. My headlights briefly illuminated a face. Pale, expressionless, eyes wide with something that wasn't fear but hunger. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I drove like hell, not slowing down until I saw the distant glow of a gas station. When I finally pulled in, my hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the steering wheel. The attendant must have noticed my pale face because he asked if I was all right. I almost told him, almost asked if he had seen them too, but something told me he wouldn't believe me. And deep down I was terrified that whoever they were, they might come looking for me again.